Every powerful artifact in the MCU comes with a receipt, and nobody ever reads the terms and conditions. The Infinity Stones fried a Titan from the inside out. An Uru war axe required a dying star as a forge. One ancient book ate the sanity of every sorcerer daft enough to open it. Sensing a pattern? Today we're ranking the 10 most powerful MCU artifacts. Not by how impressive they look in a slow-motion hero shot, but by tactical yield, strategic fallout, and the body count each one quietly racked up behind the scenes. Some of these you know, a few you've completely overlooked, and that's exactly what makes them terrifying. Stick around, because number 1 didn't just change a battle, it invoiced the universe. Number 10, the Berserker Staff. Most analysts fixate on the cosmic scale weapons. That's a mistake. The Berserker Staff, a fractured Asgardian relic hidden on Earth since the 12th century, is a case study in how containment failure starts small. The staff was carried to Midgard by an Asgardian warrior who deserted his post during a campaign and chose to live among humans. He broke it into 3 pieces, scattered them across Europe, Norway, Ireland, Spain, and trusted geography to do what willpower couldn't: keep the weapon dormant. For roughly 800 years, that gamble held. The operational mechanism is straightforward, but brutal. Physical contact with any fragment triggers a neurochemical override, flooding the wielder's limbic system with amplified aggression drawn from their own traumatic memory architecture. In functional terms, it weaponizes emotional damage. The stronger the trauma, the greater the output. Shieldfield reports from the 2013 recovery operation documented enhanced strength, reduced pain response, and near total suppression of self-preservation instinct in exposed personnel. What makes this artifact strategically significant is its accessibility. It requires no worthiness protocol, no genetic prerequisite, no mystical training. Anyone who touches it becomes a short-fuse combat asset. That's not power. That's a force multiplication vulnerability. In the wrong hands, a single fragment could destabilize a garrison. All 3 pieces reassembled? The intelligence community classified it as a localized extinction risk weapon before it was secured in the fridge facility. And we know how well that storage solution worked out. But a staff that weaponizes rage is a street-level problem. The next artifact on this list weaponized an entire climate, and one empire never recovered. Number 9, the Casket of Ancient Winters. The Casket of Ancient Winters is a Jotunheim-origin containment vessel for a weaponized climate system. That sentence alone should raise flags. This is not an ice cube. It is an environmental warfare platform capable of flash-freezing entire biomes. Odin seized the casket at the conclusion of the Asgard-Jotunheim War, roughly a millennium before the Battle of New York, and locked it in the weapons vault beneath the palace. The strategic logic was sound. Removing the casket crippled Jotunheim's capacity to project force across the 9 realms. Without it, the frost giants were contained on a dying world with a collapsing ecosystem. With it, they had the ability to rewrite planetary climates on a continental scale. The thermal output data is staggering. When Loki deployed the casket during the Asgard succession crisis, the energy discharge flash-froze Heimdall, an Asgardian gatekeeper whose physiological durability had withstood centuries of direct exposure to Bifrost transit energies. Encasing a being of that resilience in solid ice instantaneously indicates thermal suppression output that overrides enhanced biological tolerances at a cellular level. Dismiss this as a weather anomaly and you've already lost the threat assessment. This is a strategic denial weapon operating on a biological warfare threshold. The casket was presumed destroyed during Ragnarok, alongside the vault's other contents, when Surtur leveled Asgard. But the underlying question persists. If Jotunheim built one, what prevents them from building another? The engineering knowledge survived the war. The materials are native to their realm. This is a dormant proliferation risk, and no post-blip intelligence briefing has addressed it. Freezing a world is devastating, but the next artifact didn't just destroy, it reversed death itself, and Asgard kept it in the same room. Number 8, the Eternal Flame. If the Casket of Ancient Winters represents environmental suppression, the Eternal Flame is its inverse, an uncontained energy source with verified reality alteration properties, including the resurrection of the dead. The flame was originally in the possession of Surtur, the fire giant prophesied to trigger Ragnarok. Odin defeated Surtur, claimed the flame and, in a decision that historians still debate, stored it in the same vault as every other weapon of mass destruction he'd confiscated. The security philosophy appears to have been consolidation over distribution. Centralize all existential threats in one location and guard that location with the full military apparatus of Asgard. This works exactly until the guard falls, which it did. The flame's verified capabilities extend beyond simple combustion. When Hela accessed the vault during her occupation of Asgard, she used the eternal flame to reanimate her fallen army, including Fenris, an Apex-class war beast, whose skeletal remains had been interred beneath the palace for centuries. The energy signature required to reverse biological death at that scale, restoring neurological function and combat capability to decomposed tissue, suggests the flame operates on a level that intersects with Soul Stone-adjacent energies, though no direct connection has been confirmed. The tactical verdict here is uncomfortable. The Eternal Flame wasn't just a weapon. It was the ignition key for an extinction-level event that Asgardian leadership knew was coming and chose to store in their basement rather than destroy. That's not caution. That's institutional denial dressed up as strategic planning. Fire resurrects armies. But the next artifact doesn't need an army. It rewrites the wielder's mind, and every single person who opened it lost something they never got back. Number 7. The Darkhold. The Darkhold occupies a unique classification. It is simultaneously a weapon, a delivery system, and an intelligence-gathering apparatus, all bound in a single codex, authored by the elder god Chthon. The operational history is extensive. The book surfaced in Westview, New Jersey during the Maximoff anomaly. It resurfaced in Kamartaj during the multiverse of madness incursion. In both cases, the documented effect was identical. The Darkhold doesn't simply grant knowledge. It systematically overrides the user's moral architecture while exponentially amplifying their existing power set. Wanda Maximoff, already classified as a reality warper operating at near-infinity stone output levels, used the Darkhold to develop dreamwalking, the ability to possess alternate universe variants of herself across the multiverse. From a containment standpoint, this is the most operationally dangerous informational artifact ever documented. A weapon can be locked in a vault. A book propagates. The Darkhold existed in every universe simultaneously, and the knowledge it contained could not be unlearned once absorbed. Even after Maximoff destroyed every physical copy during the Darkhold Castle collapse on Mount Wundagore, the operational question remains. Chthon inscribed the spells on the walls of that mountain before the book existed. The Darkhold was always a copy. The original source was the architecture itself, but the official records miss something critical. The pattern across every documented user, Agatha Harkness, Morgan Le Fay, Wanda Maximoff, isn't corruption, it's optimization. The Darkhold doesn't break its wielders. It removes the inefficiencies that conscience creates. Every user became more powerful precisely because the book stripped away the hesitation that kept them contained. That's not a flaw, that's the design spec. A book that corrupts is terrifying enough. But the next artifact gave one man 1,000 years of unchecked power, and nobody on Earth even knew it existed. Number 6. The 10 Rings. Xu Wenwu recovered the 10 rings from a tomb approximately 1,000 years before the blip, and the origin of the artifacts remains unverified. No Asgardian registry, no Kree weapons manifest, no known Earth origin metallurgy matches their composition. They are, in intelligence terms, a provenance black hole, 10 bracelet-form weapons of unknown manufacture that granted their wielder functional immortality, energy projection, and enhanced physical capability for a millennium. The strategic record is extraordinary. Wenwu used them to build and maintain a global paramilitary shadow state, also called the 10 Rings, that operated across centuries with no decline in operational capability. The organization toppled kingdoms, manipulated governments, and maintained influence networks that persisted into the modern era, directly intersecting with Stark Industries' weapons contracts and SHIELD. Operations without detection. The energy output metrics are significant. In the Battle of Ta Lo, the rings demonstrated concussive force projection, sufficient to breach the dimensional barrier separating Earth from the pocket dimension. They also functioned as a resonance beacon that inadvertently signaled the Dweller in Darkness, suggesting the rings operate on a frequency that interacts with extra-dimensional entities. Post-transfer to Shang-Chi, both Wong and Bruce Banner confirmed the rings emit a signal of unknown destination. That signal is still active. The rings are broadcasting, and as of the last available intelligence briefing, no one knows who or what is listening. That signal is still unanswered. But the top 5 artifacts ahead don't wait for a response. They rewrite the rules of engagement entirely. Starting with one you thought you understood. You're halfway through the classified index, and trust me, the top 5 is where operational threat levels go vertical. If this breakdown is rewiring how you see the MCU's power structure, hit the hype button below the video. It's YouTube's newest feature, and it directly fuels more deep lore analysis like this. Stay locked in. Mjolnir. Mjolnir is the most psychologically complex weapon ever forged. It is not simply a hammer, it is a sentient loyalty filter, built from Uru metal and bound by an Odin Force enchantment that makes it functionally the most exclusive access control system in the 9 realms. The forging specs are extreme. Uru is a proto-metallic ore native to Nidavellir, a neutron star forge operated by the dwarven smiths under King Atri. The metal's unique property is its capacity to absorb and channel magical energy, meaning Mjolnir isn't powered by an internal source. It's a conduit for whatever energy its wielder can feed into it. In Thor's case, that's the Odin Force-derived lightning manipulation he inherited genetically. But the worthiness enchantment is the real weapon. Odin imposed it after Thor's banishment to Earth, and the criteria remain undefined in any accessible record. Vision lifted it. Captain America wielded it. Jane Foster was chosen by the hammer itself after it had been shattered and reassembled. The selection algorithm, if one exists, doesn't correlate to strength, morality, or even combat experience. The most defensible analysis is that the enchantment identifies tactical necessity. It goes to whoever the operational situation requires. The destructive ceiling is well documented. Mjolnir channeled sufficient lightning energy from atop the Chrysler Building to neutralize entire Chitauri squadrons simultaneously during the Battle of New York, operating as a force multiplier that turned atmospheric conditions into a directed energy weapon. It stalemated Gila's necrotic weapon constructs for an extended engagement, and yet Gila crushed it with one hand, confirming that Mjolnir's upper limit is defined by the enchantment's power source, which is the King of Asgard. When Odin died, the enchantment's enforcement mechanism weakened. The hammer didn't fail. Its authorization framework lost its administrator. Mjolnir chose its wielders. The weapon at number 4 doesn't bother with permission, and it did something no other artifact has ever done against all 6 stones. Stormbreaker. Stormbreaker was forged under crisis conditions at Nidavellir after Thanos had already slaughtered the dwarven population and disabled the forge by freezing the iris mechanism of the neutron star. Thor, Rocket, and Groot reactivated the star manually, a process that required Thor to absorb the full thermal output of a stellar body for an extended duration. The fact that he survived is itself a data point about Asgardian physiological tolerances that most analysts underweight. The weapons classification exceeds Mjolnir's in every measurable parameter. Stormbreaker carries no worthiness enchantment, meaning it operates as an open-access weapon system, a critical vulnerability that Thanos nearly exploited and that Thor himself acknowledged. Its Uru construction absorbs and channels energy at magnitude sufficient to summon the Bifrost Bridge independently, a capability previously restricted to the Asgardian palace infrastructure. In practical terms, Stormbreaker gives its wielder unilateral interdimensional transit capability. Call it a weapon if you want. In reality, it's a strategic mobility platform with offensive capability bolted on. The confirmed combat ceiling is the single most significant data point. Stormbreaker, thrown by Thor during the Battle of Wakanda, penetrated a full-power energy beam from the Infinity Gauntlet equipped with all 6 stones and embedded itself in Thanos' chest. No other weapon in recorded history has overcome the combined output of 6 Infinity Stones in a direct kinetic engagement. The failure was tactical. Thor targeted the torso instead of the head or the gauntlet hand, but the weapon itself performed beyond any reasonable projection model. Stormbreaker overpowered the stones through brute force, but the artifact at number 3 didn't need force. It made the entire concept of losing irrelevant. Number 3. The Eye of Agamotto. The Eye of Agamotto is a paradox in artifact classification. The housing, an ornate amulet forged by Agamotto, the first sorcerer supreme, is itself a precision instrument for manipulating temporal energy fields, but its primary function for centuries was to contain and regulate the Time Stone, making it simultaneously a containment vessel and a weapons delivery system. Stephen Strange's deployment of the Eye during the Hong Kong Sanctum Crisis and the Dormammu confrontation demonstrated capabilities that exceed conventional power rankings. Strange created a localized time loop, trapping a multiversal entity of effectively limitless power in a recursive temporal prison until it capitulated. The energy expenditure required to impose temporal law on a being that exists outside of time is, in any rational framework, incalculable. Yet, the Eye sustained it. The tactical implications are severe. Time manipulation doesn't win battles, it makes battles irrelevant. Strange used the Eye to survey 14,065 possible futures during the Titan engagement against Thanos, selecting the single outcome thread that led to victory. That's not combat, that's strategic omniscience operating through a single artifact, wielded by one individual with no oversight committee, no authorization chain, and no kill switch. After the Time Stone's destruction, the Eye persists as an artifact of the Kamar Taj Armory. Its residual capabilities without the stone remain classified, but given Agamotto's documented mastery of dimensional and temporal energies, dismissing the housing as an empty shell would be a critical intelligence failure. The Eye bent time. But the artifact at number 2 didn't just bend space, it painted a target on Earth that brought every existential threat straight to our doorstep. Number 2, the Tesseract. The Tesseract is the containment housing for the Space Stone, and its operational history reads like a classified arms race dossier spanning 8 decades of terrestrial conflict. Johann Schmidt recovered it from a Norwegian church in 1942. Howard Stark pulled it from the ocean floor. S.H.I.E.L.D. built Project Pegasus around it, and every single entity that attempted to harness it triggered a cascading escalation that ended in catastrophe. The energy profile is sobering. Hydra weaponized the Tesseract's output to produce directed energy infantry weapons during World War II, ordnance that disintegrated organic matter on contact. Decades later, S.H.I.E.L.D. used the same energy source as the foundational research for Phase 2, a classified weapons program designed to counter extraterrestrial threats using Tesseract-derived munitions. The engineering throughput of the Tesseract was sufficient to power both programs simultaneously, while also generating the energy signature that drew Thanos' attention to Earth in the first place. That last detail deserves isolation. Earth didn't become a target because of the Avengers. Earth became a target because its intelligence agencies couldn't resist pulling energy from a cosmic artifact they didn't understand, and that energy signature functioned as a beacon. The Tesseract's greatest destructive contribution wasn't any weapon built from its output. It was the signal it broadcast across the galaxy, inviting every power in the cosmos to come and claim it. The containment history confirms a pattern. No terrestrial organization successfully regulated Tesseract energy without suffering institutional collapse. Hydra was destroyed. S.H.I.E.L.D. was infiltrated and dismantled. The lesson is consistent. The Space Stone doesn't serve its handlers. It exposes them. The Tesseract destroyed institutions, but the number 1 artifact didn't just destroy, it rewrote reality itself, and every single person who used it paid the ultimate price. Number 1. The Infinity Gauntlet. There is no debate at this tier. The Infinity Gauntlet, in both its Uru-forged original and the Stark-engineered Nano Gauntlet variant, is the single most powerful artifact ever documented in any accessible intelligence record. Its capability ceiling isn't measured in destructive output, it's measured in ontological authority. With all 6 stones mounted, the gauntlet grants its wielder the ability to rewrite the foundational rules of reality across the entire universe simultaneously. Thanos commissioned the original gauntlet from Atri under duress, and the design parameters tell you everything about intent. It was engineered specifically to channel the combined output of all 6 Infinity Stones through a single biological interface, a requirement that implies the user's body becomes the surge regulator for energies that predate the universe itself. Stark's snap to eliminate Thanos' army killed him outright. The data is unambiguous. The Infinity Gauntlet is a suicide weapon at full output for any biological user. And yet, this is the artifact's most terrifying feature. Not its power, but its economics. It demands a life for its use, not as a malfunction, as a design constraint. The gauntlet was built by a civilization that understood you cannot restructure the universe without paying a proportional cost. Every snap was a transaction. Thanos paid in flesh. Stark paid in full. The universe balanced the equation both times. The gauntlet didn't fail its users. It invoiced them. 10 artifacts, 10 institutions that thought they were the exception. The final verdict reveals the one pattern that connects every single entry, and it's the lesson nobody learned. The through line across all 10 entries is identical: escalation without comprehension. Every faction that acquired one of these artifacts, Asgard, Shield, Hydra, Camartage, the Ten Rings organization, treated the object as a strategic asset to be leveraged. None of them treated it as a systemic risk to be mitigated. The Asgardian weapons vault was a trophy case, not a containment facility. Project Pegasus was a power plant, not a quarantine zone. And the Infinity Gauntlet was commissioned as a tool, not recognized as the terminal invoice it was always designed to be. The classified pattern is this: MCU artifacts don't empower civilizations, they audit them. Every artifact on this list eventually destroyed or fundamentally compromised the institution that claimed to control it. The only variable was the timeline. Some took centuries, some took hours. But the outcome was always the same. The artifact survived, and the wielder didn't. If there's a strategic lesson buried in these records, it's one that every intelligence agency in the post-blip world should memorize. The most dangerous thing about a weapon of mass destruction isn't its yield. It's the institutional delusion that you're the exception, that you'll be the one who wields it without consequence. No one ever is. That's the full classified index. If this analysis changed how you rank the MCU's power structure, smash the hype button and drop your own ranking in the comments. More deep lore tactical breakdowns are inbound, and the next one goes even darker. You've been briefed.